Alright everyone, at risk of having at least some proportion of my audience dogpile me for saying the wrong thing, I'm actually going to weigh in on the James Gunn stuff. Now I kind of did on Twitter, but here's the big takeaway. There are so many different things that have to be said about this. This might be a little bit of a long video, which I regret because I'm making an appearance later, I need to go garden. I've got better things to do than talk about a now former Hollywood, producer or whatever he is. James Gunn, Guardians of the Galaxy figure. No, I didn't watch the movie. I don't watch kids' movies anymore. Although I do think the idea of a space raccoon or whatever he is looks pretty cool. Raccoons are pretty cool. They're adorable. He apparently years ago used to make a bunch of illicit jokes that I can't even repeat on here without worrying about the algorithm. So on Twitter, it's like you can get banned on Twitter for making a mildly offensive comment once about one person, like you'll get kicked off forever. But James Gunn, I guess because he's a blue check mark, because he's verified and famous and rich, he could make jokes that were, well, again, I don't even want to really think about them. So you can go, yeah, I mean, they're all over the internet, they've been archived and stuff, and it's like, the big thing here was that it was about victimizing children. That rubs a lot of people the wrong way for obvious reasons. Now, I'm going to say this. I do not believe in deplatforming people for jokes, but, big but here, when a person has spent several years making literally hundreds of jokes about the same basic concept, habitually, despite the fact that it is provably, demonstrably not actually humorous, doesn't that seem slightly strange? It's not like, oh, he made a couple of jokes that he dug up on 4chan about perverted stuff. Okay, that's granted, it's a couple jokes he dug up on 4chan. He's claiming, though, that he's so single-minded that he's making hundreds of such jokes, and I'm thinking to myself, why would Disney, which is ostensibly a family-friendly company, want to continue to employ someone making that kind of comment on a regular basis? I can understand why they wouldn't want to. Now, some people are like, well, he shouldn't be fired for it. He's apologized. He was just joking. Great. Okay, again, I'm not going to crucify the dude in the court of public opinion like some people are, assuming that he's perverted. I'm not going to make that logical leap. But can't you see why people would be upset about this? They're thinking he's associated with what essentially is a kid's superhero movie, a young adult movie or something, and he's making these kind of comments in a public forum. And then they started attacking Cernovich. Now, Cernovich was the one, he and some of his fans that would sort of popularize this started digging them out, archiving and making screen grabs of them, posting them around. And it's like, if it were just like one thing, it's like potentially a shoop or something, I'd be hesitant to even talk about it. But when you've got hundreds of instances, they've been archived, and then he goes back and deletes everything, like purges his whole account, it's like, yeah, that's a little bit odd now, isn't it? Now, of course, I think it's just a career move for him. He's trying to save his career, and he's like, oh shit. The other part, though, is the hypocrisy. Ben Shapiro was being a hypocrite about this, because didn't he, like, sort of chuckle about Roseanne getting kicked off of her own show? And, you know, the reboot won't do anything. He chuckles about that, but then he's like, well, James Gunn shouldn't be deplatformed. We need to defend him in free speech. And then I've got people who are total authoritarians, and I know some of these people are. Some of them are shit posters on a regular basis on my material. The sort of people who say, hey, people should be banned for the wrong think opinions. Big tech can ban whoever it wants. It's okay if private entities ban anyone for any reason. Lol, you are a snowflake for not wanting that to happen. You call yourself a capitalist, but you don't want businesses to randomly deplatform people for minor infractions. These same people are now jumping on me, acting like I'm doing something wrong for not caring if James Gunn gets fired by a family movie corporation for making habitually, over the course of a long period of time, a bunch of posts where he's talking about things of a far more illicit nature. Look, the things he's talking about, even in a joking context, are illegal. The things that so-called offensive people are talking about, they're just opinions. They're not illegal at all. Not in the civilized world, anyway. Maybe in countries that are more ass backwards. Maybe in Sweden stand at this point. Perfectly legal to weigh in on political things. Perfectly legal to say, yeah, I completely support free speech. Perfectly legal to suggest even the things that, you know, the more hardline ethno-nationalists suggest. You know, they might cause a genocide, and I've confronted them with this, but, you know, the actual, the sort of sanitized message that they put out publicly is perfectly legal. They're like, hey, you know, I love my race. Okay, well, it's legal to love your race. Okay. It's not legal to do the things James Gunn is bragging about having done, even in a joking context. Again, I'll just assume that it's a joke, but it's weird and it's not funny. Look, why would Disney, you've got funny movies, you're supposed to have basically a lot of the kids' side of Disney movies, they're meant to be funny. They kind of, they get a lot of wisecracks and one-liners and stuff. So you want people that have good senses of humor probably making those movies, right? He doesn't have a good sense of humor. Nothing he posted there was funny. There's a difference between edgy humor, something that breaks a taboo and is thus potentially funny in a grave humor situation, and something that is simply crass. It's not actually humorous, and if you think that it's humorous, you probably shouldn't be writing jokes for movies. Let's just point that out. From a purely commercial perspective, Disney's totally right to fire him. Again, I don't believe in deplatforming, but I mean, what does he expect? He's living in, the funny thing is, he's one of those people, he himself, James Gunn, is laughing about Roseanne getting canned, and he's like a total never-Trumper in ways. He sounds like he's to the left of Bernie Sanders on some of these things. And so he gets a pass, sort of. There are people that are like, well, no, this time we shouldn't deplatform. He's such a great guy. He was just joking. It's just a joke, brah. Okay, well then if someone makes a bunch of racially tinged jokes, do you want them not to be deplatformed? Because people get deplatformed for that constantly, even if they don't mean it in a racial context. People get banned for wrongthink, even if it's not on Twitter itself as a platform. So what are you talking about? And then you're asking me to like defend him after the same people who are asking me to do that are like, well, corporations can do whatever they want. Private companies, lol, capitalism, as though that has anything to do with it. The concept of a people being able to own the means of production and produce profit thereby has something to do with deplatforming. No, it doesn't, actually. It has very little in common with it. Other than the fact that a good business tries not to deplatform anyone if it can help it, unless it's going to irreparably damage the brand. It's like there's a difference between if your PR person has said off-color things and if some random janitor has said off-color things. The former matters from a business perspective. The latter, unless you make it an issue, it doesn't. James Gunn, very public persona, well-known, high-hitting, heavy-powered individual within Hollywood. Disney basically projects its brand through them. And then people were, when trying to defend him, they were like, well, let's look at what Disney has done in the past. And they're showing 50, 60-year-old clips from cartoons where it has caricatures, like the Siamese cat from, what was that fucking movie there? Was it, I can't even remember, was it Lady and the Tramp, I want to say, or one of those movies from that golden era of, kids' cartoons. And it has like Asian caricatures, it's a Siamese cat, and it's a little bit like out there. It's not even a human though, it's a cat. It's a cat breed that they're depicting. Yeah, it's racially tinged. What the fuck does that have to do with modernity? You're talking about stuff from 60, 70 years ago, and trying to compare it to someone a few years ago making jokes about, there's no comparison whatsoever. Again, one is long in the past, the other is relatively recent. One has nothing to do with anything being done nowadays, the other is contemporary. One of them is perfectly legal, the other is alluding to things that are totally monstrous and totally illegal. Where's the similarity? I guess it's just in the heads of James Gunn's liberal fans. Honestly. No, I'm not going to defend the dude. I don't believe in deplatform, but there's another thing. People do need to keep this in mind. There's a difference between some independent commentator online who made an off-color joke and someone who is making fucking probably 8 figures to do movies. There's a big difference between those two situations. He's basically a spokesperson for Disney. People who are on a platform like YouTube, we don't speak for YouTube, we're YouTubers. We use the platform. We're Twitterers, we use Twitter. But we're not representing those platforms. He basically does represent Disney, at least to some capacity. He's a face at Disney, working for their company. And it's a family-friendly company. YouTube's basically M-rated. Twitter is X-rated. Dude, there's porn all over Twitter. It's not even against the rules. There's no fucking comparison. You can't compare the two situations. Independent creation on platforms meant only for adults versus someone who is working for a family-friendly company, all designed by contract. He's not an independent creator. He has bosses telling him what to do. Where's a fucking similarity between these two things? There's no similarity at all. No, if he had told a couple of off-color jokes years ago and Cernovich came along and said, well, we should be banned for this, I'd say, well, no, that's sort of liberal tactics. It's deplatforming for illegitimate purposes. This is different. And to attack Cernovich and be like, well, you know, the top, if you looked up James Gunn, the top result on Twitter with their latest was basically one of these priority accounts there, and it was a total left-winger, and they're like, well, this is one of the least offensive things Cernovich has ever done. And it's like, you're attacking the person for what his fans basically are the ones digging it up. He's just sort of posting about it, popularizing it. His fans are digging up old tweets that are publicly available. James Gunn never removed them, didn't have a problem with them until a few days ago, and you're trying to crucify Cernovich for doing that. It's not harassment. It's not even really an attempt to deplatform. Disney has to make that determination. And it is not the same as some internet-only persona who is independently making content on a site that is totally decentralized. That's not how Disney operates. Disney's an old guard style corporation, not a social media firm. And it's not involved in human communication. It's an artistic site. It makes movies. That's and runs shitty theme parks and stuff. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, Disneyland and shit like that, I would never go to them. That's about all. Peace out.